I think if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you probably launched too late. When we first launched, I would describe it as an MVP, right? I'd describe Paiger as the complete business development platform for recruiters. It helps you to identify leads, to research those leads. So it's all about good old school BD, but in an efficient way.
And how is it different now to when you first started? Have you had to pivot much?
Yeah, I hate the word pivot because
Darren Westall is the co-founder and CEO of Paiger, the platform helping recruiters win more business with less admin. From failing IT at college to becoming a CTO by 28, he launched Paiger in 2018, now powering 750 plus agencies worldwide.
So I quickly realized that I was very good at product, I was very good at tech. The reason Paiger came around is one of our key features is if a marketer wants you to share a piece of content on LinkedIn, we can send you a text message, your phone will go off and then you say yes to it, almost like old school Pagers.
What's the plan then for the product? What can we see next from Paiger?
Big thing for us is over the next year.
If you look into the companies that have been really successful and go all the way back into their early stage content strategy, absolutely nailed it now, got it right in the beginning. Now, if you're in the recruitment technology space, you might remember 7 years ago, Paiger doing exactly that. Really, really interesting product. And today I get to meet their CEO and founder, Darren Westall. So welcome, Darren, to Founders Stories.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Probably a bit overdue, really. I probably should have had you on the show before, but we got there in the end.
I will forgive you. I'm here now.
Thank you very much. So tell me and anyone else listening. So the reason I ask is obviously I know Paiger, but this is a product that's evolved quite a lot and responded really, really well to the needs and changes that are going on in the industry at the moment. So give us a potted view of Paiger as it is today and what the product does and the problems that you solve.
Yeah, I mean, I'd describe Paiger as the complete business development platform for recruiters, which in this market is absolutely a must-have. You know, job flow is down. So it helps you to identify leads, to research those leads, understand the individuals at them. Have they been on podcasts like this that you can mention in your outreach? And then really personalize that outreach, whether that's with a candidate, your product in recruitment. So actually brand that, anonymize it in under a second. Or if you want to record things like video using that research you've done. So it's all about good old school BD, but in an efficient way.
And how is it different now to when you first started? Have you had to pivot much?
I like the word adapt. So we've adapted. Now, when we first launched, I would describe it as an MVP, right? I think if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you probably launched too late. And I look back now and I'm embarrassed by it, right? So when we first launched it, only did the posting on LinkedIn side. So for me, building a personal brand, posting on LinkedIn underpins your business development strategy. And it was where we started. But the product today, that is still a key part of it, but it's one module of it.
Yeah.
I describe it as 10% of what we do.
Yeah.
Whereas when we first launched, it was 100%. And actually, it was quite a new concept to people. So we had to educate the market as well. Whereas I think that is now a given that you need to be building personal.
And your recruitment agency specific in the product that's based?
We are, yeah. So 95% of our customers are in staffing. We have customers outside of it, but I'm also a big believer that you have to have focus, especially in marketing. If you try to market to everyone, you are marketing to no one. So yeah, we picked the staffing industry, given them my background and the relevance of the product, but we do have people outside of it. If they come to us, we don't turn down the money.
I actually was thinking on the train here this morning, I think Paiger has been kind of part of the recruitment technology ecosystem for seems like ages. Certainly most of the time that I was in the space, you guys, and I mentioned just when I did the introduction that you got it really right in the early days. So I know that you have walked the streets of London yourself with your colleagues really, really early on in your journey and actually got out there. You were coined as like the selfie king at one point, where you would just take selfies with everyone. You got quite famous for that. And I think that's, for me, is where a lot of founders that I see now kind of get it wrong. They're very invisible.
I think a lot of people try to be too perfect, or they worry about marketing the brand, when I think it's really important to remember that people buy from people and your customers are in your niche and they're all connected with each other. They know each other. So I quickly worked out that actually they are connected with each other on LinkedIn. So even if I just had a meeting with you in the early days, you didn't have to be a customer or Paiger. At the end of the meeting, I would say to you, do you mind if I take a quick selfie, put it on LinkedIn just to document my journey? And then that goes onto LinkedIn, your connections see that, and they all go, well, hang on, if they're talking to Paiger, I should be as well. So it was a way for us to get our brand out there with zero budget, but also make sure other people in our ICP saw us very early.
Such a great startup tactic, isn't it? And it is these things that, we're always thinking about, and maybe it's just the age that we're in. There's so many tools out there now, so many ways to kind of market your product in the beginning. And I think we're so flooded by that we sometimes forget that sometimes just going out and meeting people, taking a picture, putting it on LinkedIn, being a good person and just talking to people is a really good strategy too. And I think that's something that you absolutely nailed in the beginning. How much of your success today do you think you can attribute to those early days of just probably doing 20,000 steps a day around London talking to people?
Genuinely all of it, because the idea of picking up a phone at that time scared me. I'm a techie through and through, so I'm sure we'll get into, but I could not do anything other than go and see people, put myself out. That was the only way I knew to drive leads for the business, right? Marketing was what I had to embrace. It wasn't like I could sit in a room and make 100 cold calls, because I'd sit there staring at the phone for about 2 hours before I pick it up.
Really, really awesome. So this actually does bring me on to you as an individual. So as much as we all know your brand and you've done a fantastic job of marketing that, and I don't think there's probably anybody in the recruitment technology space or in staffing that hasn't at least heard of Paiger. So you've kind of ticked that box and you've totally nailed that brand recognition piece. If you actually take that cohort of people and ask them what they know about you personally, I think that number would go down rapidly, which is why I wanted to get you on the show, because I feel like I don't know anything about you. So we're going to go there now. So you mentioned you're a techie. Let's go even further back than the career, actually. What were you like, Darren, as a student? Like, what was your kind of education like? Let's start from the very beginning.
I didn't do too well at school. And it's not because school didn't fail me or anything like that. I just don't think that I learn in that way. I don't think, give me a textbook and say read it and then learn that. I don't think that works for me. I'm more practical. I learn by doing. So if we go back to sort of secondary school, I started at a school called St John's School. I hated it, absolutely hated it, and I really didn't go a lot. I used to walk through the gates, and probably by halfway through the day I was in the park with my mates. So, my mum found that out, and quickly I was moving schools the next year.
Right.
And the next school I went to, I absolutely loved, in terms of the atmosphere, actually going and the support they had.
Right.
But I still wouldn't describe myself as a good student. I wasn't bad by any means, but I don't feel like I learn well in a classroom.
It's a really interesting point, actually, that our environment stands for a lot. So, you were obviously you were in the wrong environment in your first school, the right environment in your second school. Yes, okay, you're not an academic and you don't learn by textbooks, and that didn't change, but at least you were happy, and we do our best work when we're happy, right? We are the best version of ourselves when we feel fulfilled and that we're in the right environment. So it's really good that at least you had that supportive parenting to make sure that you were supported. What were your family like?
What my family like? It's an interesting one, right? Because my mum and dad got divorced when I was quite young. So I almost had two families. That's kind of what it was. So, every other weekend I was at my dad's, and I describe my dad's because I think because you only see them every so often, that weekend is just full of fun, right? So automatically you think that's where I go to have fun, when actually, that's not, and I don't want my mum to listen to this and think, oh, you didn't have fun at home. But she was the one that was making sure that the things that had to happen, right? You're at school, you're clothed, you're fed, and all those sorts of things. So I describe it as sort of two different childhoods. I'm not from a broken home by any means.
Yeah. And did you come from a particularly entrepreneurial background? Did you have a lot of founders and people around you building things, or a bit more traditional?
On my dad's side. So my dad did run his own businesses, and that's probably what opened my eyes to the fact that you don't have to be an employee. I think school is there to teach people to be good employees, and not once do they say, you can actually start your own business. You don't have to work for somebody. I took business studies, and not once did it talk about actually starting a business. It spoke about how being a good employee inside a business. So yeah, I think that I get that from my dad's side, because I don't think if you don't have somebody around you that actually has done it, I don't think you even have the concept that it's possible.
I think everybody needs at some point to stumble across somebody. If you're lucky enough to have that person in your home, then great. But at some point, I think everybody has stumbled across or looked up to somebody that is on the journey. I don't think it is educated into us. I can completely agree with that. And it's something that I get a bit frustrated about with my own children, is that they're not learning how to handle money or run businesses or whatever.
My daughter's got a slime business, so she makes slime kits. So every school we go to, like the summer fete, she's there on the stall learning sales, etc. She's had some customer complaints she's had to deal with. Some kits don't always go perfectly, but I wanted her to do that not for the money. I mean, she likes the money because she can put it towards Disney trips or whatever. But for me, it's about her realizing that to make money, you don't have to have a job. You could just do your own thing.
Do your own thing. What a great lesson. How old is she?
She's 11 next week.
Wow. So we've got an 11-year-old entrepreneur in the making. Let's watch out to see what she does next. She's probably going to take over the world. I've seen your post actually about your daughter. Very, very impressive. But we just mentioned, didn't we, that we all need that person to look up to, or that someone around us to open our eyes to the world of business. And you've done that for her. So, I think that's a fantastic thing, that if she was sat on this couch in 10 years' time, she would probably attribute the fact she believes she could do it to you.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah. Coming back to the school subject, I think we as entrepreneurs can do more in schools. I think I'm looking at secondary school for my daughter now, right? And it's really clear they want the best for the children. They have budget constraints, and I'd love there to be some sort of program that they invite entrepreneurs in. I think that's probably a missed trick. It might exist. If it does, please tell me where it is and I'll sign up.
I think it's more, like you say, it's more about coming into schools. There are businesses that go into schools and tell people how to get into different fields within employment. But yeah, I think there's a fear amongst parents sometimes as well. Like when my children are a little bit older now, I've got 2 of them and they've already got ideas of, businesses that they want to run and take over the world. And there is that little bit of a balance between, yeah, that's really cool. You can do whatever you want, darling, but please go to college. And so it's kind of a fine balance. And I think schools are maybe like a little bit nervous of almost exposing the kids too much to it, but they shouldn't be. You're absolutely right. If they had the education and they had somebody like you come in and talk to them about what that journey looks like and the pitfalls, then that would be really, really valuable to schools.
I think people paint the picture that if you're an employee, you're secure, when actually I'm a strong believer if you're in control of your own destiny, you're more secure.
We can always get made redundant from jobs, and I think that has never been a truer time to say that. It's quite a volatile time at the moment if you've got a job, certainly if you're in sales.
Yeah.
You literally you take every day as it comes at the moment when you're in sales, which is, it drives people, and that's good. We should always, in sales, I think one of the best tools you can have is a little bit of fear that sits on your shoulder all the time. But at the same time, it is a bit scary at the moment. So yeah, you're right. It's not that much more secure. At least you know what's going on in your own business and you're calling the shots. You left school. I take it you didn't go to uni then, if education was not your thing?
So I went to college. I did film studies because why not? I think that was just a why not. The other ones were business studies and IT. I loved business. I love business studies. IT, I actually failed college, which, fun fact about me. Yeah. So the reason I failed is because the lessons were teaching me things I already knew. Like I was sitting in college being told how to do macros on Excel. Right. By this time, I've already built websites. I've built web servers, and I'm sitting there going, this is absolutely mind-numbingly boring. I remember there was one lesson I actually taught. You had to do an interactive widget on a website. And I built a whole chat room, and I helped every single student how to build it. Yeah, I failed that course.
How can you fail a course that you taught?
It was so boring. And when it comes to the exams, it's like,
yeah, I can't be bothered.
I can't be bothered.
So hang on a minute, I've just picked up on something. So you're there kind of going through your A-levels at college, but there's something going on in the background. You're building stuff. So what were you building? It was something you'd commercialised, or just a hobby that you had?
I would describe it as a hobby that paid. So I was building websites for local businesses. So anyone that put a post out saying, I need a website, 5-page basic website, I could do that in a weekend. So it was like, yeah, I'll do that. So it comes back to my gaming days. So I was a big gamer. I used to play Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. If anyone's a gamer, that's the best FPS ever. I wouldn't have anyone say different.
Are you still gaming now?
Yeah, sometimes. Right. So kids in the business get in the way of that a little bit. That's not fair to say. Don't get in the way of it. You know what I mean. I would if I had spare time. But yeah, on that game, you can do things like mod it. So you can change it so you can have an unfair advantage, shall we say. Some would call it cheating. But you can make your player like float in the air, etc. So I learned coding from that because I realised I can change the configuration behind the game.
Ah, okay. So and then somehow you've gone, this is a skill that I've learned. I can now apply this to make a little bit of money for local businesses that don't necessarily have the budget to build or go out and outsource their website build.
for the days of Wix and all of these website builders, right? So you still had to go to someone and say, look, I need a basic website.
And they would charge you like £15,000 or something.
Yeah, I was doing it for 250 quid.
Right. Okay. Well, no brainer then.
Yeah.
What was your go-to-market strategy then, Darren?
I would honestly just look for just that were posting on, I think it was Facebook at the time.
Yeah.
Who knows which one? But yeah, Facebook local groups, etc. Does anyone know anyone that can do this? And word of mouth. Once you build a website for one person, you'd be amazed how many people know someone that needs a website.
Yeah. I wonder how that early stage, those little, that hobby that paid money, and that early stage go-to-market strategy, if you like, which is, let's get out there and talk to people. I wonder how much that then left you equipped then go into Paiger and actually go, do you know what, the best go-to-market strategy is to get out there and talk to people, because that's what you've always done. And that seems to have also been 100% apparently of the success of Paiger today. So it's kind of those early skills that you learn actually have paid off.
I'd agree with that. I think what we realised early on is that everybody talks, and no matter what it is, people build it on a pedestal, right? Sales, maybe it's a big 1,000-person business. I'm talking to the CEO. It's still a human being, right? It's still a human being who probably likes a beer just like I do. So why not offer a beer? I just think we've got to realise that everyone's just normal people.
Particularly in the world of AI, where we're craving this human interaction now, aren't we? Because it's becoming less and less throughout the course of the day. How much are we now interacting with real humans versus a non-human, which is great because it means we get things done a lot quicker. But I think if you can tap into that human connection element as well, and we're never going to lose that. It's actually, I don't know if you've read a book called Sapiens, but it's actually a basic human need is contact with other people, just like food and water. So I don't think we can ever lose that if we want to truly survive.
I've been saying to all of our customers, they're all trying to automate their business development end to end. And I keep saying to them, you're going to have short-term success, but in the medium to long term, you're going to do so much damage to your business. Don't replace the human part around business development. And I hope they're listening. Because I know you can automate emails, you can do all of these things. That's not what people want.
Yeah, and actually coming from a platform that does all of the automation piece, they should really listen to you, because what you could be doing is telling them that they can automate everything if they use your product, but actually you're being honest with them and building trust by telling them that it's a blended approach as opposed to a, one size fits all. So what happened then, Darren, between college and you starting Paiger? What kind of jobs did you have?
So first job, I worked for my dad actually in his business. So he ran a training centre for people that are doing like plastering courses, etc.
Nice.
I did not teach plastering. I can't do DIY. What I taught was the IT element. So I actually became a bit of a lecturer, if you like, in IT. But then one of my good friends, Mike Smith, if you end up listening to this, he's the reason that I actually went into the next job. So we were on a Messenger, if you remember MSN.
I do, actually. I am old enough, yeah.
I think I was on it during work hours.
Yeah.
A message from Mike said, we're hiring for a junior developer. Do you want to interview? And I said yes, but then I found out the salary was $13,000 a year. So I think at the time I was on like 20 something, right? It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was a significant jump, downwards. So yeah, and I went home and I spoke to my then girlfriend about it. And I said, what should I do? And she said, well, I can tell that's what you actually want to do. That's what you're passionate about. So, even though we were young, we were probably 17, 18. Even then she said, well, you should do that and I'll make sure that I support us for while you're learning. And that's 17 years old. And I should say she's now my wife.
I was really hoping you were going to say that, because I was like, what if your wife watches this and you're saying such amazing things about your then girlfriend?
No, so without her giving me that support then, I wouldn't have gone on to learn actual development, actual coding, because my job at Broadbean as a junior developer was my gateway into true software development.
Yeah. So you went to Broadbean, which is a very well-known brand, as a developer, and you were there for how long?
I was there for 11 years.
So that's just before Paiger then,
Yeah.
right? You went from there to Paiger. That's the job.
That's the job.
That's the job. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and how you were as an employee then while you were there, because that's a big, big stint. So you must have been quite happy.
Yeah, I was happy, and I always say that I wanted to start a business much sooner than the 11 years, but Broadbean was such a good place to work that actually I didn't. And I went through, there was probably 2 or 3 different Broadbeans. So we went through different acquisitions, different scaling. When I first started as a junior developer, my only goal was to act like a sponge. I had so many intelligent people around me, and I just wanted to learn from them. One person in particular, Andy Jones, who was my team lead at the time, honestly, is a god when it comes to software development. And I just remember sitting next to him thinking, I'm just going to sit here and listen and learn.
Yeah.
And he gave me my first book on programming. He said, look, if you want to know, you need to read this. So coming back to the school, I hated textbooks. And I was like, oh no, here we go. Actually, I opened that book and I didn't put it down. I learned that book end to end, like there was no tomorrow. So I started as a junior developer, but very quickly we had a team called the integrations team, which was responsible for connecting different systems to the Broadbean system. Broadbean's probably the most integrated HR tech in the ecosystem. And I think I built about 1,000 integrations in my time there. Yeah, but I went from the integration team quite quickly to be a full stack developer in the main tech team working on the core product.
So very much techie now at this point. You've gone 2 feet into tech and this is what you do. So outside of work then, obviously to get into Broadbean, you'd have to take a massive cut. Your girlfriend, super supportive of that, and shout out to her, by the way. Great decision there. I'm sure that you've paid her back a couple of times since then. But it's a really important point, actually, that, behind every great man, behind every great woman, there's a support network. But I'm a true believer, partly because of my own situation, that you can't do it on your own. And your team at home is just as important as your team at work in order to be successful. So what was going on outside of work while you were having your Broadbean journey? You got married?
We moved out quite young as well. So I think we probably moved out at the age of, I think about 19, it may have even been sooner. So we had our first house. That's when real reality hits, right? You've got bills to pay, etc. So yeah, we did everything young. I think we were engaged at 21. But if I've got that date wrong, please don't kill me. But yeah, everything was, when you know, right? So you're kind of on this journey together. We moved out, and then, as I say, I always wanted to start a business, but the timing was never quite right. So we were buying a house. Suddenly we had a mortgage. She was pregnant with with my daughter. Right? You can't leave a business then. Why would you do that? It's completely nonsensical. But at the same time, I was getting promoted. So it was either something happening in my personal life that stopped me leaving to start a business, or I just took over the application support team. So I was their manager, and I don't want to do that to the people that are there, and I'm learning new skills. And then if we fast forward to sort of the end, by this point, my daughter's sort of growing up, and I was made Chief Technology Officer. So sort of the pinnacle, if you like, of what I was trying to do.
Yeah, the dream, right?
I was 28 years old, and it was like, wow, I'm in charge of the product and technical teams of Broadbean, 28 years old. I should be happy. And I remember going home and speaking to my wife and saying, I'm not, and I don't know what's going on. And she said, well, talk to me a bit about it. I was like, this can't be it. This cannot be 28 years old. I've reached the top of my ladder. And pretty much the very next day, I decided I was quitting my job to start a business, because I'm a big believer, if you don't have a goal in life, then I think you're missing something. When people that are successful and they come out and say, I'm depressed, you sit in the pub with your mates and they say, how can he be depressed? He's doing this, he's doing that. I think it's because they've lost their goal. And I think we've always got to have what is the next thing we're trying to do in our mind.
Certainly for natural born founders and entrepreneurs, one of the questions that I tend to ask people on the show is that, do they believe that there's something in our wiring or our DNA or something that makes founders born that way, essentially? I think the general consensus is probably yes, but the things that define us are slightly different. So one thing that comes up quite a lot is kind of a risk or an appetite for risk, sorry. But I think the most consistent answer is that wanting more, or at least being able to see what's next and constantly moving forwards. And actually, when you look into the science of it, and I'm not a scientist, I've done enough to be able to do this podcast. I've done enough reading to know what I'm talking about a little bit. But actually, there is something in the way that founders tend to be wired, it's very much kind of forward facing. And that's what enables us to just, when bad things happen, not get stuck in a hole or fall down the hole, because we just continue to move forward. So I agree that, you should never base whether somebody is allowed to be depressed on how much money they've got in the bank or what else they've got. It's not something that they're choosing to feel. They're just feeling that way. And often it's because they can't see that next thing. And another thing that I'm really taking from what you've just said is, what a best time to start a business is when everything else is going really well. Not when it's like you're at the bottom, your bank account's empty and it's like, oh, I've got to do something, I'm going to start a business. it can be done, but you've chosen a really hard thing to do. But the day after you get promoted to CTO at 28 is probably a really nice time to make that.
I didn't give my notice straight away, right, because I wanted to have some experience in that role. I thought it was important that if the business doesn't work, I can say, obviously, to Broadbean, not just for a day, right? I bided my time a little bit. Turns out I bided my time just a little bit too much, probably because a week after I actually handed my notice in, we found out she was pregnant with our second child. And I remember the conversation. It was like, yeah, can you stay? Can you? And I was like, no.
No.
What I can do is say to you that if in 6 months' time we're not covering the bills, I'll get a new job.
Right.
And that was the ultimate goal, right? Because I didn't want to get a new job. I wanted to business.
Yeah.
But that was the agreement we had. But luckily, 6 months fast forward and we were covering the bills.
So 6 months fast forward, I'm sure it's all go at Paiger, and you've got a very, very pregnant wife at that point. So how did you manage that?
I'll be honest, I was an awful husband at that point. I look back and that's probably one of my biggest regrets. I had to prioritise the business, and it's one of my biggest regrets not being there to support her as much as I should have been.
I'm sure she doesn't hold it against you.
I hope not, but I'm acutely aware that, you know, if I look back and go, what were you doing? You dickhead, go home. Like, why are you at this event talking to these people when your wife's pregnant? But I felt like I had to be there. I had to be doing these things in order for the business to be a success. And ultimately, it was because of the long-term goal. But yeah, I look back and I do hate myself a little bit for that.
I think the acute awareness is enough to make you a really good husband. It would be if you were like acutely unaware that you did that it was anything like weird about that was probably where you'd be a bit of a dickhead. But I think the fact that you feel like that, and you've obviously carried that around with you for now 7 years. How old are your youngest?
He's 6.
6, yeah. So 7 years from that point, I think is enough to say, do you know what, you're a pretty stand-up guy. I'm sure she's fine about it.
Fingers crossed.
Why Paiger?
So when we originally launched, it was called Content App because it only did the content side of it. But every person we spoke to said, where do I download the app? And we didn't have an app. So we realised it was a terrible name. And also every phone call, they said, did you say continent? And we said, no, Content App. So straight away we said, look, we've got to rebrand. One of the big learnings for me is that don't worry too much about what you call your business at the start, because actually you can change it. The reason Paiger came around is one of our key features is if a marketer wants you to share a piece of content on LinkedIn, we can send you a text message. Your phone will go off and then you say yes to it. Almost like old school pages. But then we wanted to make it clear we're a tech platform, we're moving it forward. So we put the AI into it before AI was cool. So I'd say we were there before everyone else jumped on the bandwagon.
You were first. And so you were you is it a bootstrap business? You've got a co-founder? How did that work?
So Rohit came with me. He was from Broadbean. He was on the sales side. So whereas I'm saying I couldn't do cold calls, he absolutely could. He does them for fun and he's absolutely brilliant. So I quickly realised that I was very good at product. I was very good at tech, reasonably good at marketing. I know you've been complimentary, reasonably good. I think I'm better now. But the big skills gap for me was sales. So yeah, that was the perfect co-founder for me at the time.
Yeah, I think that's the classic. You've got someone from tech and someone from sales, then usually you've got a good blend of jobs for everybody, haven't you, in those kind of early stages. Did you get an office? Did you get a team? Like how did you start?
We were completely bootstrapped. So we bootstrapped until we're a million ARR.
Is that something you'd recommend? Is that
I highly recommend it because it's really expensive to raise money at the early stages. And also you're better raising money when you found product market fit and you've ironed out a lot of the creases. Because once you raise money, you're going to have board meetings, you're going to have accountability that you're not used to as a founder because, you know, you don't answer to anyone. So I'd rather you do that once you've actually got rid of all of the unknowns, or most of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can get there before, because were you profitable at that point? We've
always been profitable because we had to pay our bills.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that kind of that fear that I'm talking about from a sales perspective. That's the founder fear that's quite useful, isn't it? It's like, actually, we've still got to buy stuff. We've still got to pay salaries and all the rest of it. And what did the team look like? Did you need to kind of hire around you for technical stuff, or did you manage to build it by yourself?
For a long time, we didn't hire in tech.
Right. So you were coding, you were doing built the whole thing from scratch.
To the point where I remember me and Rohit traveling up and down the country and I was glued to a laptop. I always had my rucksack because if things went down, I was the only person that could fix it.
Wow.
So it was like...
I bet those early adopters of Paiger had no idea that it was just you, just like building stuff.
And also that was a double-edged sword, actually, I have to say, because if I'm in a sales meeting and a customer says to me, I'd buy it, but it doesn't do this. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, I can build that this
I can
week.
do that, yeah. You have to go, I'll speak to the...
But also you end up with feature bloat, right? Because I'll build that for them, and you've got to actually, you've got to remember what you're trying to actually build and keep on that path.
Let's just stick on that for a second, because that, I think, is one of the top killers of startups, is that because there's this pressure to listen to early adopters, to get feedback from pilots and beta customers and that kind of thing, which is I'm absolutely on board with. But what happens then when you have Post-it notes all over the place, feature requests coming in from everywhere? How do you actually manage that and decide what the roadmap looks like?
Yeah, so I've always had a very selfish mindset that I know what I want Paiger to be. And if a feature doesn't align to that vision, then it's not going to get built. And that can really annoy some people, right? But when you know what you're trying to build and what you want to achieve, you have to be laser focused. We do have a tool called Savio, which if you've not heard of, it's brilliant.
Right.
It enables customers to enter ideas, but it integrates with tools like HubSpot and Salesforce.
Oh, okay.
So you can actually then rank ideas by MRR. So you're not doing ideas for just anyone.
Right.
You're actually going, for this idea, how much of our revenue have people actually raise the idea from?
Yeah.
So they're the ones we do. So we build the roadmap based on what I want. And then alongside that, I'd say 40% is what our highest paying customers ask us.
Yeah, exactly. And also, a CTO sat in an office somewhere with no idea of the industry that you're working in, no idea of the problems that you're fixing, just building for you because it looks nice and that's what you want to build. You've put the hard yards in, you've done the steps, you know this industry very well, you know the challenges that people are facing at the moment. Everybody needs pipeline. I actually feel like recruitment's making a bit of a comeback. I don't know whether you have got that feeling as well, but it does feel as though things were much better now than they were maybe 6-12 months ago.
I think the last 18 months have been a struggle for a lot of people, but I'm hearing, I hate the word green shoots, I'm hearing more than green shoots now. It feels like actual repetitive results are coming.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because everybody's had to get good at sales again. So we had a blip, I think, where actually we were not doing any business development because we were so busy as I say we, I've not been in recruitment for like 25 years, but recruiters were not doing business development anymore, and new recruiters coming in were not trained to do it properly. So now we've had to kind of catch up, and now I see sales teams in recruitment that are selling in the same way as we do in SaaS. Right, they have a process, and they have a pipeline, and they have repeatability and all of these things. So I think that's why we're starting to see that positivity, because we have pipeline and it gives you that little bit more confidence. So I suppose your products at the moment must be doing quite well on demos because of the challenges that are currently faced in the industry.
Yeah, and I'm friends with lots of other founders, right? And I almost feel guilty because I'm sitting in rooms going, well, in terms of new business, we're fine. Like we're doing really well. But I think that comes down to relevancy. When we came to market with LinkedIn and personal branding, that was relevant then. And it is still relevant now, but it's not hyper relevant, right? So I think that what we've done well is always be hyper relevant, whether that's the personal branding wave or now it's the BD wave. The good thing is I don't see the BD wave actually stopping. I think people have learned their lessons that actually you can't take your foot off that pedal even in good times.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And not just in recruitment as well. It has to be consistent. The business development isn't something that you do when you are behind target. It is evergreen and something that needs to happen all of the time. And I think staffing's really caught up to that now. And it's absolutely part of their kind of growth strategy. Thing that I've really noticed is how little I did know you, so I was correct. Thank you for being so open and honest. I feel like I've really got to know you now, and one thing we can conclude from this, I think, is that Darren from Paiger is really, really nice guy, and you do nice stuff, and you treat people well, which is probably testament to success. So Paiger is smashing it still. 7 years is relatively long time in tech, right? You've kind of you've done a bit of a live sentence there. At the moment, products are kind of coming and going really, really quickly. Is there a reason that is it just because there's been this kind of big evolution of sales and marketing, and you've kind of rode that wave? Was it always the intention to run a business for a relatively long time?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought 10 years is probably about right. But it's not. I always say to people when I interview people, they always say, obviously it's a SaaS business. You're looking to exit. When's that? And my answer is always when I've stopped having fun, right? And it's that simple. So for me, we've still got a lot to achieve. It feels like we're saying we're a great success. In my head, we're not. There's still so much more we need to do, especially around America.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about what's next then for you guys. By the way, I wasn't going to ask you when you were going to exit because that would be a really boring question. And I'm sure that if you thought that the time had already been right, if you'd have just put a couple of feelers out, I'm sure you would have easily found a route to that. So I've just made the assumption that you were not ready.
Until we've achieved what we want to do, I don't think the time is right.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, I spent 11 years at Broadbean. This is still my second job.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're still young as well. Because you've done everything in life so young, you've now got an 11-year career as a CTO and you've run a business for 7 years and are still very young. So that's a really exciting place to be, I suppose, for you.
Yeah, I mean, with my BMI, I think I'm midlife. That's what I think. So.
Darren. Oh dear. Right. Okay. Moving on very quickly. So yeah, what's the plan then for the product, for the business? Like, what can we see next from Paiger?
Yeah, I mean, big thing for us is over the next year is integrations. So we've always been quite siloed. I think it's because of my PTSD from my Broadbean days of having to build so many integrations. I was like, no, this one, I'm going to do it without having to integrate. But where we're now so core to the BD workflow, actually those integrations are a must. So you'll see integration after integration after integration coming from us. But the bigger picture is the US, because we're very well known in the UK. We're established, nearly 1,000 customers in the UK. I'd like to replicate that in the US market.
Yeah. Really great, exciting stuff. So are you going to put boots on the ground there, or are you just going to start from the UK? Like, what's the strategy?
So I've been to a few conferences, and my view is that actually it's too important not to do it myself. So I will probably you'll see me going back to those events, all of those things that I did right at the start to make Paiger what it is in the UK, I will be doing in the US.
You know your wife's going to get pregnant now, don't you?
I hope not. Who knows?
So you've got the 2 kids. You've got the 2, right? Okay. Well, I mean, I think if anyone can do it, you can over there. I think your strategy of the early stage of how you built Paiger in the UK, if you pick that up and take it into the US, I can see it being as successful, if not even more, because their human connection and is very, very important over there. And do you know what? With their US, they absolutely love being sold to as well. Like, they really appreciate a good sales process. Like, what have you got kind of from a team perspective now? So obviously in the start, you were doing everything from a tech perspective. I assume that's not the case anymore. And you had Rohit that was doing the more sales stuff. And then I assume you layered in kind of customer success across that. How has that evolved? And what does the team look like now?
Oh, massively. I mean, we're now 32, 33 people,
Yeah.
I'll take. We've got head of marketing, head of sales, CTO, product manager, head of customer success, so it has changed quite dramatically. All I would say is I'm involved in every single one of those departments as if, I was working within them. So I still heavily involved in marketing, heavily involved in sales, still do my own deals. And yes, I still code of a weekend.
Is that something you would recommend for CEOs to be, because I suppose what you class yourself very much not a startup now, very much kind of scale up because you've got this big, this goal to get into the US. So for other scale up CEOs, do you think that kind of having fingers in all pies is a good strategy, or is that something you just can't help yourself?
No, I think it's a good strategy. I think that so many people from the outside looking in would say it's micromanagement. I'd say that it's working on the same level as them in the, I don't know how to describe it. I see it as a bit like a war, a battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're not willing to get on the front line with your people, then don't be at the war.
And how do the people see it? Do they like your involvement, do you think?
You have to ask them.
That's very diplomatic. I'm sure they do. I mean, you hold on to people, right? You've got good retention, and rec tech is, as you know, quite volatile, there are revolving doors a lot. You see the same kind of names pop up all over the place, but you seem to be a good place to work.
I think we are genuine, and I don't think it's because of perks and things like that. I think it's just because we are a unit and we are trying to achieve the same things, and we've got a good level of transparency as well. If there's a challenge within the business, we speak about it, and we don't try to hide things.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about for you? Have you got any kind of personal goals? What can we expect to see from Darren?
My personal goal, that's an interesting one, right? Because coming back to my regrets, I think actually what I need to do is find a better balance between the two. That's my number one goal right now. Within work and life, yeah. Because my son's now 6, my daughter's 11. And have I been at every single thing I should have been? No. If you said to me, what's my number one goal right now? It's to continue the success of Paiger without the detriment of my home life.
Okay. So you want to continue to grow, but you don't want to have to make the same sacrifices as you did the first time around and kind of fix some of that. It's not a bad personal goal to have, or it's not a crazy personal goal just to want to get some more time doing the things that you enjoy and that mean.
I think it's important to remember that they're not going to be kids forever. So actually, I can have another goal once they finish school, once they've done these things. But right now, my immediate goal has to be for them to have a brilliant childhood.
Do you think as a family you'd want to move out of the UK?
I would, because it's the right thing for the business, but also I've always loved America. So my favourite holidays are Disney. I'm a Disney fanatic. Yes, I watch all the YouTube videos. That's me.
You would not have guessed that at all.
Well, I love it. Me and Mickey are like that. So, if you said to me I can move to Florida, I'll be there tomorrow. People have got friendships now. My daughter's back going to secondary school, etc. So I don't think it's the right thing for them. So no, we wouldn't. But I do love Florida.
Well, it's not a bad sell, is it, to the kids? Do you want to, take them to Disney and be like, would you like to live here one day? It might be, if you can sell it as that, then maybe, watch this space. Do you spend much time out there? Or in the US anyway?
US will become increasingly, obviously, with the business goals, but Disney is our number one holiday.
Fantastic.
I'd love to say we go every year, but it's too much money.
So, Darren, you have literally such an amazing experience. You've packed so much into such a relatively short life so far. I'm sure that it hasn't always been, and you've been very honest and open up until now, and I'm getting from you that it's not always been easy, and there'll be other founders setting out on similar journeys now or are going through similar things now. What would you say to them around where those pitfalls are and what to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest regret as a business owner actually was that I employed one of my friends in early days, and he did absolutely nothing wrong. He was a brilliant guy, but actually the stage of the business wasn't ready for him, and it was also during COVID, etc. So we had to make a really, really tough business decision, and it was the right decision for the business. But God, that felt like shit. And luckily, he is a true friend because we are friends today. But if I had one piece of advice, is I wouldn't say don't hire friends, but really think about it.
Yeah, if it doesn't go out it's supposed to, it can wreck something that's so much more important than a employee relationship.
Absolutely. And it's not because they're not the right people, but unfortunately businesses, your needs change, etc. All right. And you just got to know that, unfortunately, at that time, you've got to do what's right for the business. Yeah, as I say, he's a really good mate, and he continues to be. But if there's one piece of advice, it's just think twice and make sure you do the right thing.
That's a really good one. We've not had that one before. So, excellent. Darren, I've really enjoyed our chat. I could probably talk to you for another couple of hours, to be honest, but I'm conscious of your time. It's been really insightful. So many parts of what you've said have just resonated so much with me, so I'm sure they will with other people as well. How can people reach you and get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation? Just
LinkedIn, Darren Westall. I'm literally a workaholic, as you've heard, so message me on LinkedIn. I'll come back to you pretty much daily.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for joining us, Darren.
Thank you.
Thank you.